Thank you everyone so much for joining us tonight. Over the next hour, we have 4 wonderful DHF alumni panelists joining us. My name is Alex Colley, and I am the Program Director with Diabetes Hope Foundation. I take care of all of our different transition programs for youth who are transitioning through various stages in their life, such as transitioning from pediatric to adult care, transitioning from high school to post-secondary, and transitioning from post-secondary to the workforce. But you can find out more about our programs by visiting our website at www.diabeteshopefoundation.com. So tonight we will be talking about diabetes, of course, but we're also going to be talking about our home and work life, the new normal, what is the new normal, as well as isolation back to integration into the real world. All of our panelists tonight are DHF scholarship recipients from previous years. Our alumni also come from an array of different backgrounds and professions, and they'll all be able to share their different opinions on all the topics talked about tonight. But since we're all experiencing the same journey and we're all here to help each other, remember this is not school, and our goal is to make this a fun conversation with you and our DHF alumni tonight. So ask your questions and share your comments, and we really look forward to having you tonight at tonight's Speakeasy webinar. As we begin, we really want to know where all of our viewers are coming from. So in the chat, let us know where you're coming from. It's really nice that we have the internet to bring us a little bit closer together because we're all in completely different parts of the country. I'm from Collingwood, and we'll hear from our alumni where they're from. So let's get things started with some introductions, and then we'll get right into our conversation. One thing before we do get going, I would like to mention that our alumni here tonight are not medical healthcare professionals, and any advice given from them today is a resource only based on their experiences. So if you have any questions, please refer to your healthcare team with any questions that are related to your health. So without further ado, is everybody ready? And we'll start some introductions. So Amanda, let's start with your introduction.
Welcome everyone, thank you for joining us. So my name is Amanda, and I'm currently isolating in downtown Toronto, which is where I live. I'm a registered nurse and a certified diabetes educator. So I've done a little bit of everything in that role. I used to work in a hospital in pediatrics in the UK, and then right now I'm working as a clinical diabetes specialist with Canada Diabetes Care in Canada. And
awesome.
Then, I got my scholarship in 2010, so a while ago now, and then I'm kind of involved with a variety of things, and one of my favorite things with the Diabetes Hope Foundation is the scholarship application reviews.
Awesome, thanks Amanda for sharing. And Mikhail, what about you? Give a little introduction.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a 2011 alum. My name is Mikhail. I've also been involved with Diabetes Hope Foundation for a good amount of time now. I'm also bunkering down here in downtown Toronto, which is where I live with my girlfriend. Pretty much have been living here for the past 3 years. So I also work downtown, so life is more or less business as usual, but I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later. Yeah, that's sort of a quick snippet about me.
Awesome, thanks Mikhail. And Amy, what about you? Thanks for joining us. I know you're a little bit late, but thank you so much.
My name is Amy. I am living in Greektown in Toronto. I've had diabetes for over 10 years. Currently, I work on a mobile app for a bank, and as a result of that, it's gotten really busy lately. And something interesting about me is I like to sew, so I've been making face masks, and I've been trying to get my face masks to match my shirts. I've been making like shirts that match with my face masks. It's the latest in COVID fashion.
That's awesome, Amy. It's nice to keep yourself busy with a hobby during times like this. So, and thank you for making all those masks. That's a really great idea. Now, Mark, what about you?
Yeah, hey everyone. My name is Mark, and this is actually my 10th year living with diabetes. I was a 2015 scholarship recipient, and I'm currently bunkering down in Markham, Ontario.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so it's a little bit about all of our panelists, and as each of them talked about a little bit, we will be getting more in depth with what they brought up. But I first want to start off with more of a general question for everybody. So what are some of your concerns and anxieties about managing your diabetes during this pandemic? Because we know there are some, quite a few stresses with what's going on. So Amy, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think my major concern during COVID and having diabetes is, what does being autoimmune suppressed mean? Because I read that a lot over the news and in like lots of Facebook pages for diabetics. So like I still, to be honest, like don't understand 100% what it means, but it does seem to mean that I am of higher risk when I am recovering from it. And one way of dealing with my anxieties, whether it be, so actually funny story, I used to be very afraid of flying. And the way I conquered that fear was to just look into how planes work, like understand aerodynamics and how the air under the plane is actually holding the plane. And I think similarly, I've been trying to read up as much as I can about diabetes and its relationship with COVID to help me feel a bit safer. And something else that's helped me overcome these anxieties a little bit has been going on like different Facebook forums for type 1 diabetics. And there you'll see lots of people who have had type 1 diabetes, who has type 1 diabetes and have had COVID and recovered, as well as people who currently have COVID. And you can learn a bit about their journeys through those means as well.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, is joining those forums is a really good idea to stay connected and to relate to one another. And that's really why we're here as well, because we know that there's so many people who can relate to you guys. So again, thank you for sharing your experiences. Now, Mark, what are your anxieties and stresses around your diabetes management?
Yeah, I mean, initially coming out of a co-op work term downtown and then moving back to Waterloo, I found out that would be canceled. So I guess in terms of a lot of interaction with people, it's kind of limited now. So I'm not really very worried, but initially I was worried about insulin reserves and kind of making sure that I had all the products that I needed to keep my health in check. And that's still been my biggest worry, but I think I've been able to manage that pretty well so far. Other than that, I mean, keeping up with people rather than seeing them physically has been a big help, and it's definitely cut down a lot of the anxiety around getting sick and making sure I'm recovering.
Yeah.
If I do get sick, yeah.
That's a very good point as well. And I know it can be a little hard now going back from a co-op term and not really knowing what to expect moving forward. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as well. But Amanda, what about you? What are your concerns and stresses right now?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest was the change of schedule from, moving around and being quite busy to living in under 600 square feet. Definitely not getting the same amount of exercise or activity. Basically just the increased need for insulin that I've noticed since having to work from home, which we're on week 7 now. So I've created a new profile that has been named quarantine and just increase my rates across the board to try and deal with it. And then looking at kind of creative new ways to stay active while at home. I've done yoga in the living room that I've streamed off of some Instagram live accounts. So it's really, we're all pretty well equipped living with diabetes to being resourceful. So it's finding those creative ways to manage well at home all the time.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. So if there's anybody watching, what creative things are you doing right now? As Amanda talked about, you guys are very, very creative in what you do. So is there anything that you guys are doing differently or the same? And Mikhail, how about you? Are your stresses and anxieties the same as everybody else, or do you have different ones?
Yeah,
what are you going through?
Generally the same. I will just add that, my biggest concern probably as it kicked off was just availability of supplies. And so I think in a similar fashion, the way you've seen sort of worldwide consumers start to pantry stock and buy up things hoping to hunker down, I think we've kind of done the same thing, but we've really done that around supplies, right? So that just meant getting more insulin and getting more pump supplies for myself. So I think that's probably the only real anxiety that I had around this, and honestly it was resolved sort of in the first week. And thankfully, all the devices and the companies that support us, they're all essential, and so what that means is they're going to continue operating. But there was sort of a slight concern at the beginning, what if there's some issues in supply chain and manufacturing and they can't get, items shipped and that sort of thing. But thankfully, I'm not worried about that anymore.
Yeah, and you make a really good point. I think the healthcare companies and the pharmacies have been doing a really good job at limiting supply, but I've noticed that they've had to do that across the board with all medications. I know myself being one of them. So have you noticed any changes in your actual day-to-day diabetes care routine? I know, Amanda, you talked a little bit about fitness and what you've been doing, but in regards to your actual day-to-day routine compared to when you were working full-time and now being at home, have you drastically seen a change in that? So Mark, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, sure. Personally, I haven't really seen a drastic change. Even my own insulin consumption, I'm actually finding myself eating less than I usually do rather than more. I think that has to be with, or it has to do with not being in the office and not really grabbing lunch and all the Starbucks and so on and all the coffees. So I'm definitely consuming less. Same time, I was just worried about the the product chain and ensuring that I had enough insulin in case something happened. But so far so good, and I think they're handling it pretty well, as Mikhail stated.
Good. That's really good to hear as well. Now, Amy, how's your day-to-day routine changed?
So when this first happened, I realized that it didn't really change my routine when it comes to diabetes too much, just because the major difference would be me not being in the office versus me being at home now. So I actually wanted to take this opportunity to fix up my basals, because I've read in the past from, I don't remember which book, but to perfect your basal rates, what you can do is across 2 days, don't eat for a certain amount of time at the same time, so that you can see how your basal pans out without any food and without any insulin. So what I've been trying to do recently has been, like, for example, for 2 days at a time, I won't have lunch, and I monitor my blood sugars throughout then to see if my basals are better that way, or if not, I would give myself more insulin or less insulin. So this has actually been a really good opportunity for me to figure out my basals, as well as trying new diets. I'm actually vegan now, something I'm trying, because if you're at home and you can manage your blood sugars better by not being out and about all the time, why not take this opportunity to get a bit healthier?
Yeah, and that's something that I think many of us have struggled with being healthy. I know I've indulged in quite a few sweets because I've done a little bit more baking than I normally do. But it's really good to try new things, especially with new foods and just eating different substances, which is kind of cool. So, Mikhail, how about you? Have you noticed a change in your routine?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the reality of kind of working from home is that you have a little bit more flexibility, I think, around your schedule. And so what that means is that, typically before I would get home by like 7, have dinner, and then take a break before I would sort of do my exercise, because I can never get it done in the morning. And so what that means is that I kind of cut it pretty close to sort of to bedtime, basically, before I started working out. And so that obviously introduces some volatility overnight, because depending on what I do, my sugars will behave differently. Versus now I have the flexibility to be able to, lift some weights like at 4 p.m. and then come back to work at 5 and then work till later or earlier, whatever it is. And so I think for me, actually, it's been a net positive, if I'm being honest, just because A, I'm cooking all my food, and B, I have more flexibility of my schedule. And that's probably what's making diabetes management so much easier.
That's a really good point, especially about the times when you decide to work out, because it will affect you differently. So great point to make, Mikhail. Amanda, but other than doing yoga in your living room, how has your day-to-day diabetes care routine changed? Oh my goodness.
I've been trying to take, the positives from it, and that I have a more consistent schedule. So lunch used to not always be at the same time, same with dinner. And so trying to get into the habit of having a routine, and then finding that, just almost taking the chance to eat a little bit better, less of those grab and go meals, or you're just taking a granola bar in the car for the road for breakfast. So it does definitely have some positives that have come out of this. And it's mainly what I've seen is just that I need more insulin because I'm not moving around as much.
Right. Well, and that makes sense too, but it's nice that you're getting active, even if it's just doing some yoga and doing what you can. So now, during those questions, each of you talked a little bit about specific topics and specific issues related to all you personally. So I want to ask each of you a specific question. And Amy, I'm going to start with you. So you said that you work in technology and that you run an app for a bank. How's your workday changed since the pandemic began? Are you working more from home? Has it been busier, especially with the increase in technology use?
Yeah, so I've been working entirely from home now, and all my calls are online, and we're on Zoom actually 24/7 sometimes. And it has changed in the sense that it's gotten a lot busier, just because as a result of people not being able to bank in their branches or call the contact center to get things done. We've gotten a lot of requests to add new functionalities within our mobile app for people to be able to not have to call the contact center. I think right now, if you call Scotiabank, it's a 4-hour wait. So we'd rather you be able to do it on your phone. But because of these pressures from all these directions, it's gotten a lot busier for sure.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, I'm glad I'm with Scotiabank, so I'm glad that I haven't had to call for any reason and wait for 4 hours. So that's awesome that you're doing that up and continuously changing. So thank you for those of us who bank with Scotiabank for making it a little bit easier. And Mikhail, I'm going to jump next to you for another question. And so we've talked before, and you work for a small company, and now that you're working from home and you do like it, I would say a little bit better than working in the office. You have a little bit more time to yourself, but how have you been managing your daily work since COVID, and how have you been keeping, keeping motivated throughout the day?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, first, like, couple of notes about my job, right? So I'm a financial analyst or investment analyst. And what that means is most of my job revolves around basically looking at different companies out there and doing analysis and trying to figure out if you want to buy or sell stocks as part of our portfolio. And so, the first thing that sort of happened is once this sort of COVID became a global issue is that a lot of things in the financial world have changed. A lot of stocks kind of crashed, and there was a disproportionate amount of work that needed to be done in a very short amount of time, because the financial markets are very interesting in a way that, this crisis, unlike other crises, has actually seen a pretty quick down drop, but also a pretty quick recovery as well. And so what that means is that you've had to do a disproportionate amount of work in a very short amount of time. And so all of which is to say is that it's been busy. And so there was basically no time for figuring it out. It's just kind of like go, go, go. And so that's just the reality of it. And I think that comes with sort of being a part of a smaller team as well, is because it's all hands on deck. Your responsibilities are shared, not in a very traditional sense, in a sense that I know where my role starts and ends. It's more like just do anything and everything to help us through this time in terms of figuring out which stocks to buy or sell, but also how to transition to, working from home. And so I'd say, and I think lastly, the truth I think that we're all realizing now is that a lot of our jobs can actually be done remotely with almost not a lot of disruption to the job itself. And so, so in that sense, it's kind of reassuring that it's actually, I think this job can be done from home, quite frankly. And I think, for what it's worth, I think employers are probably going to have a bit of a different view once we all come back eventually.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, talking about how our jobs really, we can do them from home. So Amanda, that actually brings me to your question, because you don't normally work from home. You are out in the community and you teach, but teach in a healthcare setting. So talk a little bit about that and kind of how your job has changed, and where compared to Mikhail, it's a little bit different, a little bit more difficult and challenging to work from home.
Yeah, so definitely when this all started, there was a little bit of a lull where I don't think anyone really knew what to expect, how long this was going to last, or would we be back to work in a couple of days. And so, as we all know, diabetes doesn't wait for anything, right? So we had to quickly adapt, and luckily we were set up very well to be able to start doing remote web training. So for a lot of you who've probably been trained on an insulin pump, you know that probably wasn't the norm. You had someone come to your home or at the clinic and do the teaching that way. And so what we've been able to do is provide it like this, and I hold pumps up to the screen, and we have an app that I can share the screen with to walk people through the steps, everything like that. And so what we're asking, it's a little bit more, from the pump user, that they are having to do a little bit more prep prior to the pump training. And really, it's definitely different teaching someone how to insert an infusion set over video than when you're there in person. But I've done definitely a lot of them over the last couple of weeks, same with the rest of my team. And so overall, they've been going very well, and we've had a lot of success. And so I think it's, a benefit that we're able to keep people moving and advancing in how they want to manage their diabetes. So we've been really fortunate to keep going that way.
That's really interesting. So how many a day would you say, like how many trainings or teachings do you do, and do you find it really difficult to do it over video chat? I know that you said you do require a little bit more participation from those who you're teaching, but how do you find that? I think everybody else would be really interested.
Yeah, so we have two different processes. So essentially, for someone who's switching the pump, because they already have a lot of background knowledge, we do it in a one training session. And so we meet like this. We review the pump, we confirm their settings, because they're able to upload to Diasend, which is what the Tandem uses. And so I'm able to confirm that they have entered their pump settings correctly, because safety is the #1 priority. And then what's been probably the most interesting is that someone who's brand new to pumping. Because for someone switching, right, you already are comfortable, but someone brand new to be doing it not face-to-face, well, kind of face-to-face, I suppose, we do that over 2 training sessions. So we kind of take 1 training session to warm up to the idea of what the insulin pump is, a lot of the terminology, the expectations, and then we meet a couple days later over conference, and that's when we actually start them up and running on their pump. And so it's been going very well. I've been very happy with how things have been going, because the biggest feedback just is people want to get started. They don't want to wait, and it's hard when we don't know how long people will be waiting, especially with diabetes in your clinics where they're in the hospital. We don't know what opening up will look like for us right now.
Yeah, well, it's really good that you're able to do those teachings. And I'm sure for those of you, our panelists, probably remember if you're on the pump, when you had your training. So it would probably be a little bit different now getting a virtual session than an in-person session. So awesome. Thank you, Amanda. Now, Mark, we'll move back to you. So your situation's a little different. Although you were working in a co-op setting, but you were still in school. And you're still in university, right? You'll be taking spring classes, I believe. How do you expect that to kind of unfold now if you were supposed to be actually in courses taking spring classes online?
Yeah, I mean, they've all universities have changed their policy across the board. So everything's going to be online for the time being from a health standpoint, just to ensure everyone's safety. Even exams have moved online, and professional exams such as CPA are being delayed. Even my friends that are writing the bar exam are going to be delayed. But again, I think a lot of businesses as well as schools are going to readdress their work or study from home policies, because a lot of this stuff can be done remotely, and even to a higher degree than you would have been able to do at the office. And that's just because you're more comfortable and you're able to get more work done from your work environment. So I think a lot of reassessment is going to take place over the next year on those policies.
Right. So with the spring classes and online classes, I have 2 questions. So 1, have you ever done online learning before? And 2, if you haven't, or if you have, what are some tips that you would maybe give somebody who's about to embark on the online learning journey to, again, stay motivated? Because I know when I was in university and I had a few online classes, I was not motivated to do them. So it's a little different when I'm getting my degree. But how, 1, are you going to stay motivated? And what can you provide other people?
Yeah, agreed. I think it's just a matter of decluttering your space and cutting out that time to focus on school. When you're in person, like you have to go to campus, you have to go to class. You're kind of in that mindset where you have to travel to get somewhere in order to do the thing for the course. And then you're kind of done for the day, essentially. Whereas now every time kind of just bends together. So whether it's work or school or time for dinner or time to exercise, it's all just kind of one part of one big day. And then even the days are kind of meshing together now. So I think it's a matter of just like creating a schedule, following it, and trying to just set time aside for the small things and even the bigger things. So assignments versus family time, and trying to make sure that the time doesn't mesh together.
Yeah, that's very true. And I know when we were all speaking yesterday, Mikhail, you had said work is home and home is work. So you don't really, there's a hard line to draw because everything, you're right, Mark, everything just kind of comes together. But we do have a comment that I want to bring up. Kristen said online classes can be fun because there's a lot more interaction and a lot more marks that can be used towards polls and posts. So that's a really interesting point. I would prefer personally like to go back to online learning, but that's done, that's over. So I wish you all the best of luck, Mark, with your spring classes, and hopefully you can get back to your co-op soon.
Thank you.
So okay, so we're going to jump back to healthcare, kind of, and what you're doing to stay healthy and active, especially with eating, diet, and your mental well-being. So what are you doing to combat all 3 of those to make sure that you're not going crazy during these crazy times? So Amy, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, sure. So mental well-being, I think, is the key thing during all of this. At work, we have a sort of like a meditation club, and it used to be we would go to the meditation room together once a week, but now I kind of just send out meditation videos on YouTube to people. And lots of them are super short. So if you try to like make it, put it into your calendar as a recurring meeting and just meditate for 10 minutes, 20 minutes a day, like I think it does a lot for my day. And then in terms of staying active, that is a harder one for myself. So when I first started this, my family and I, we would Skype every day and exercise together. There's a app called FitOn, like FITON, and it's completely free and lots of different kinds of exercises. I found it hard to continue that. Like I haven't done one for over a week now, so I really need to get more exercises in. I'm trying, I think.
I think meditation is a really good thing to bring into. You're right, it just helps with your overall mental well-being. Mikhail, are you doing anything as well to make sure that your mental well-being is okay during this time?
Yeah, I think it's just like sort of maintaining the social contact, but through different means, right? So for example, a group of my friends, like we host like a poker tournament every weekend. There's a lot of sort of online poker like platforms that you can use to play and with your friends and that sort of thing. So, you know, that's like a tradition that we've had that we were doing probably once a month in person, and now we do it once a week remotely. And so that's like a sort of, I would say, a way of kind of doing the same things but differently. And I think the other part of it is, you know, shaking up your routine. Like, you know, if you don't force yourself to change your routine, like it's pretty much going to stay the same, right? And I think everyone's kind of noticed that when they had to transition to, you know, post-COVID world that we're living in now. And so what kind of the way at first the days were so different and everything was so strange, and now everything is actually the same and it's all blending in. And so it's kind of on you to change things up, right? So just introducing more activities and that sort of thing. And in a weird way, like, for example, like my girlfriend and I used to always go for walks, but now what we've done is we started going for walks in areas that we haven't actually walked in before, or we take a turn on the street that we haven't walked in before. In a way, it's made me sort of appreciate Toronto a lot more and get to see more of the city. And in a twisted way, like this is something I would have never experienced had, you know, COVID not broken out. So, you know, those are the little things that I do.
That's it's a really good idea, is shaking it up, even just in the smallest ways, to make the days not blur together. And that's a really good idea. I'm really happy to hear that you guys are doing different walks and getting to see different parts of Toronto. So that's awesome. Amanda, what about you?
Yeah, so I mean, from the physical side of things, right, as I said, trying to do some yoga in the living room and just accepting if I only do it once a week, that's okay. It's, you know, every little bit is going to help, and just trying new things. Me and my partner do a lot of walks, and kind of echoing the sentiments, we're driving around to less busy areas to try and walk some new places that we wouldn't normally do. And then in terms of, you know, your mental health and staying on top of that, a lot of it was kind of realizing that we were going to be in this for a long time, to monitor how much of the news that we intake every day, and trying to do some more positive news sources, or even just listening to some of the meditations. We tried a trial of Headspace, I think it's called, and just using things like that at the end of the day to kind of recenter and realize, all right, well, this is how it's going to be for now, and so what can we do? And as people say, you know, like house party and Zoom conversations, I've done more of that than I ever would have. And sometimes even me and my friends just all choose a show to watch, and we'll hit play at the same time on our phones, and then we're, you know, Skyping over our computers. So it's just, again, getting creative with how you can connect with people in this new way.
Yeah, and you're right, it's all about connecting in new ways, and I'm sure we'll get back to the old ways eventually, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later on. But Mark, what are you doing now as well to keep your mental well-being in check?
Yeah, definitely trying to get out of the house as much as possible, but in a controlled setting. So going for walks. I recently just bought a bike so I can bike around. In a weird way, just like Mikhail said, there's a lot of positives, but also a lot of negatives. So I actually haven't been home for more than 4 months at a time in the past 5 years, just because of co-op and back to school every single term. So it's given me a chance to kind of hang out with family and get to see from a distance my friends, I guess, in the same town. But at the same time, also looking forward to get back to how things were.
Yeah, and Mark, you bring up a good point where you've been living away from home for quite a while and now moving back
Yeah.
in with your family. So we'll talk about that next. So how has that transition been for you? Living on your own, kind of doing your own thing and now moving back in with your parents. What has that been like?
Because I was working before, it didn't really affect me as much. I was still out of the house for most of the day, on audits or on client sites. But now that I'm home for good, it's kind of given me a moment to kind of go through old stuff, a lot of old photos, a lot of things I didn't expect I had. Brought back some good memories. But yeah, it's definitely nice to have life kind of slow down to a good pace right now. There's a lot of negatives going on, but at the same time, it's made me take a step back and kind of rethink a lot of my goals and where I'm trying to get to. So.
Yeah, it's really nice to have that time to think, but like you mentioned, to reminisce about, I guess, the good old days and look at old photos. So that's awesome. Now, like I said, everybody's in different living situations, which is really interesting. So Mark, you talked about moving back in with your family. Now, Amy, when we were talking yesterday, you live with roommates. So what has that been like, and what boundaries have you had to set while living with your roommates in this time?
Great question. Actually, they can probably all hear me because we're all on the same floor. But I'm gonna be honest. I have 3 roommates. I lived with some of them before, and we're all really good friends, so that's fantastic. The only thing that's come up recently is that we all have calls all the time. We all do similar jobs, so we're always on calls, and we basically turned the living room into a workspace. So our dining table is no longer the dining table. It's got 3 monitors on it. And so recently I've noticed that I do have to set certain boundaries. So for example, if I can't listen in, I can't have other people talking or watching the TV while I'm on a call, then before I sort of was just completely okay with that. And recently I realized that if we're going to be in this for the long haul, I do have to have a hard conversation about things like that. So yeah, be very, I guess, aware of what you need in the long term, because we might not be doing this for a short period of time. And I would really recommend to have those conversations if you need to, and to make sure that your productivity is still in a good spot. And another piece actually is do not work from your room. I tried that at the beginning. If you can, try to work somewhere else, just because like Mikhail said, work becomes home, home becomes work. I find when I work in my room, I don't want to sleep here anymore. So there were a couple of days when I slept in the bed because my room just feels like a workspace. And since working in the living room, I felt honestly a lot better.
And so that's really nice that you've kind of created your own workspace at home, but not going into your bedroom where it's your personal space, where it feels more like a workspace with everybody else. So that's really interesting. And it's a really good point too, when you do live with roommates or even other people, to have those boundaries that when you're working, whether you need peace and quiet. Right now I'm going through mad renovations at my house. So I have to tell my fiance to make sure that he's either not drilling or hammering or nailing or doing loud noises while I'm on a call. So thankfully it's been pretty good with that. So Mikhail, I'm going to jump back to you. So I guess you and I almost have a very similar living situation where we're just living with one other person that we've been with for a really long time. So what has that been like since you've been working from home now?
Yeah, I think it's been good. I think, I don't want to make this a non-interesting answer, but the truth is that, we've been in a relationship for a very long time. We've been together for a while now. We've moved in for more than 3 years. So, in some ways, it's basically been a non-event. But in others, because we're both working from home, because just like in Amy's situation, we're also have similar roles. We're constantly on the phone, that sort of thing. It's also been about sort of setting designated work areas for each of us. And our unit, for example, doesn't have 2 separate offices, right? So one of us has to claim it at any given time, and so we sort of do rotations to A, break up the routine, and B, to make sure everyone gets an equal amount of time to work in what I would say a much better. We have basically we have 2 workspaces, and one is really nice, and the other is not so nice. One has multiple monitors, and you can sit down, really nice rotating chair, and then the other one is just you're sitting on the couch in front of a TV that is off, hopefully. And so it's just been kind of dealing with that, quite frankly.
Well, seems like that has been going pretty well. So I'm really glad to hear that nothing's
Yeah.
drastically changed, but that's good. So Amanda, so again, very similar, but maybe a little new. So what has your situation been like, and maybe explain a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so I am downtown Toronto with my partner Michael, and so he moved in November, so a couple of months, so definitely on the newer side, but we're still together surviving quarantine, so I think that's a positive for sure. If you can make it through this in 600 square feet, I think we'll be good to go. But we've had to, right, just communication about what's going to work. So he works as a teacher, and in his school setup, they're teaching from 9 until 12, and then kind of office hours in the afternoon. So when I do pump starts, I typically try to do them either in the evening or the afternoon. We rearrange the apartment so that our monitors aren't looking at each other in the background, and we try to use headphones to eliminate, but occasionally a call will come through when he's trying to teach and try and run into the bedroom and close the door. So it's definitely, right, we have to adapt, but overall what's been nice is that everyone on the other end is very understanding, because they all know, right, everyone's in the same boat right now, and just accommodating what we can for it. So it's nice to have someone else in the house, though, on the days where you don't realize you haven't even left the apartment in 2 days, to say maybe we should try and go for a walk. So we're managing.
And that's a really good point, is that they help kind of bring the days, or make the days a little bit more separate, and it's nice not being lonely. So on that note, what are you doing during isolation and social distancing? So obviously you guys are living with people. Amy, I'm really interested to hear about what you're doing with your roommates to make sure that you guys are practicing safe social distancing, especially with everybody going out to the grocery store. So how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, I think because we are limited from like who we can hang out with and what we can do outside of the home, at the beginning, we've actually started going to the grocery store more, just because it's an excuse to get out of the house once in a while, to not be always stuck here. So we have had talks about that to see if we can go a bit less. And then the other piece is having an agreement of not inviting any guests over. So I remember one time a colleague wanted to come over and work together, and like we discussed, like let's not have any guests over just in case. And then when it comes to visiting other people, we also limited that to just our family and people we have to see, just because with more people in a household, and like people have got cars and they could go to places, like it's important to have a conversation and make sure we're all on the same page to limit the spread just in case.
And that's a really good thing to set, is those boundaries. So it's great that you guys have had that conversation, and it's nice that at least you're getting out to the grocery store maybe a little bit more often. I know I'd definitely be snacking a lot more and bringing home a lot more junk food if that was me, but that's really good. So Mark, what about you? Because since you're living with your parents, have you been social distancing a little bit more or a little bit differently, going out to the grocery stores? Other people have been doing that for you. What have you been doing?
Yeah, so I think so right now it's just me and my mom. So my grandparents and my dad are stuck overseas. They didn't want to risk hopping on a flight, so they're taking it slow over there. But so from that standpoint, we're kind of lucky, because it's just 2 people that we have to control in the environment, and it doesn't really get out of hand. I think we started going on a lot of drives because gas was so cheap. So not really getting out of the car, but just driving around, seeing nice houses, seeing if we wanted to move into any new neighborhoods, stuff like that. But other than that, yeah, just been hanging out at home, lots of walks, trying to limit the amount of times I go to Costco for groceries and stuff, just trying to buy everything in bulk. When we can, we try to order everything online and kind of leave it outside on the porch for 2 days until we can clean it off with Lysol or whatever. But yeah, other than that, just been trying to make use of the time at home, trying to pick up on reading and so on.
Exactly. So by the sounds of things, are you doing a little bit more online shopping than normal?
I wouldn't say shopping. I think the shopping would have been more if I had plans to look forward to. But definitely looking at things like bigger purchases that might happen in the future. if everything works out well here.
Yeah, well, I know, well, I've been in quarantine. We've been doing house renovations, and we're actually moving. We are selling our house and we are building a house. So that's a big purchase that we've made.
Yeah,
Well,
congratulations.
thank you. Well, this has been happening. So Mikhail, what have you been doing with your significant other? Have you guys been going out to the grocery stores more or less? It's just the two of you. So what have you been doing?
Yeah, it's just the two of us. I think we've been doing less. So kind of like what Amy was saying at the beginning, we actually went more, which is super counterintuitive. But then we've kind of realized that this is really not the right way. And so we've changed that. And I think the other thing that we've adjusted is like we tend to go to grocery store early morning, so right when it opens, because there tends to be less people there at that time, and also the shelves which has been cleaned overnight and that sort of thing. So the downside obviously is you have to be like up at 7 to be there for 8, and like work doesn't start till 9, so it's literally like go. But that's sort of like the major change that we've implemented. And I think like honestly together we've just been, so before we had like our own different gym routines, and now because we're both like at home all the time, we're taking the time now to actually work out more, because we know that once we return to regular, we're not going to be at home, or we're not going to want to work out as much. And so it's just kind of like taking this as an opportunity, knowing that we're all cooped up, to like basically come out stronger out of it, right? And I think as an add-on to that, like outside of the days when we go shopping, when I'm shopping, I mean groceries, we take the stairs now, and we live on the 15th floor, so my quads are jacked like never before. And so that's again, you got to look at the positives, right? And that's one of them. So yeah.
That's great. That's the Stairmaster 5000 we'll call
Absolutely,
it.
yeah.
That's awesome. And Amanda, we'll quickly jump to you, and then I do have another, and then I want to talk about isolation and integration next. So, but what are you doing with the social distancing right now?
Yeah, so we've been taking turns doing the grocery shop and trying to do more kind of bulk shops when we do go. It's hard with, fresh produce that usually can't last for the full 4 weeks that we try to go. But definitely, like, we used to grocery shop together all the time, but now we are doing separate. And for work, I'm set up to do online. Like, I put all my Canada Post, I can print my labels. I actually use my Salter scale from 17, 18 years ago when I was diagnosed to weigh my packages and then put them in the mailbox as opposed to going to the post office. So definitely trying to kind of be aware of not entering places together and taking turns for the grocery shop.
Yeah, and definitely being creative again is definitely the hot topic that you've been talking about. But Amanda, I'm going to stay on you because you just talked about like the grocery stores. But is there anything that you're going to be doing different now that you're in isolation and when things start to get opened back up? Is there things that you're looking forward to, or are there things that you're still a little bit maybe iffy about as things start to open up? So how are you going to be doing the isolation to integration? How are you going to be handling that?
Yeah, so we are right down by the waterfront, and in my opinion, it's been a little bit too busy for what I'm personally comfortable with. And I know, especially in the work that I am and where the diabetes clinics are located in the hospitals, I know that our company is going to take, a policy that's best for everyone, because if we're not essential traffic in and out of those hospital doors, then we need to realize that. And so we are set up to be okay to work from home. And so I think it's really going to be kind of a slow integration for us to see what comes out of it. What we're most looking forward to is Algonquin opening up again and being able to see if we can get camping for this season. So I really think is going to have to be a group effort and seeing what's best overall to reintegrate. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, well, it's nice about camping is that you're still kind of by yourself, so
exactly.
you're still kind of isolating, but that's something to look forward to for sure. So Amy, I'm going to jump to you as well. So how are you going to be dealing with the isolation to integration? And same question, are you looking forward to certain things opening back up, or what are you a little bit maybe hesitant to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm looking forward to being able to see my colleagues again and see some of my friends. I don't know if I'm looking forward to working from the office every single day of the week. I think Mikhail touched on this earlier. A lot of companies, I think, are now reflecting on whether or not these jobs have to be done in the office, because companies also save money by not getting everybody to work from the offices. So I'm hoping that collectively we'll all start taking an approach of letting people work from home more days of the week than not. And then in terms of like whether or not like allowing everybody out at the same time and that sort of thing would be difficult. In the States, I believe with their like phases and whatnot, phase 1 for them still doesn't allow people over a certain age and who are immunosuppressed to be out and about. So I have a feeling that that would be similar for us as well. We probably are not going to be in like the first stage in phase 1 of going back to work and going back into society. But I'm looking forward to it overall.
Yeah, that's really nice. I know actually yesterday was my first day back at the office after 7 weeks of being home. So it was definitely weird being back, but at the same time, it just felt like I was getting back to normal. So that was a nice thing. Now, Mikhail, how about you? What are you looking forward to once you get out of isolation? Now you're integrating back into, we'll call it real life. I don't know if that's the best term, but what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I think like the main thing for me is just family. So my girlfriend's family, for example, they have like elderly grandmas. And so we've been very careful to basically not have any interaction at all with them throughout this time. So we've literally not seen in person our family pretty much since it kicked off. And so that's probably the number one part that we're looking forward to. But then, the flip side of that is that you also don't want to jump into things too quickly. So I think, we're probably going to take an approach, one that is marred with caution, which is to say that, there will be some kind of government guideline in terms of what phases and at what rate things can come back to return to normal. And then on top of that, there will be some kind of like guidance by the underlying companies that we work for in terms of when we're coming all back. And then I think, our approach is probably going to be last of all of that, which is to say that we're going to be even more cautious than any of these things. And that's probably the way we're going to handle it. And so, all which is to say that I think it's going to be a gradual. It's not going to be an overnight change. It's going to be gradual swing back, and we're probably going to be even more gradual than the average.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I definitely think it's going to be a gradual, everything's going to open up gradually. I know I've been receiving notifications that things have actually closed for a longer period than what they expected. So, it's nice to see that everybody's taking the right precautions and they are taking care of everybody's safety and putting that firsthand, which is nice. So, Mark, how about you? What are you looking forward to, and what are you maybe a little bit hesitant to do once everything starts opening back up?
Honestly, I'm looking forward to everything. I think it's going to be a long time till we get there. I kind of miss seeing people laughing in restaurants and, being very close and everyone being in the streets and so on. But I think you just have to accept it and take this time to grow and work on yourself. And we're all going to be better off for it in the future. I think it's a good wake-up call for governments as well to really invest more in medical and healthcare as a whole. But yeah, just looking forward to see people out and about.
Yep, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing people. Unfortunately, I had to postpone my wedding until next year. It was supposed to be this July. So it's, that was fun, but everything happens for a reason. I don't believe that this was meant to happen, and this being COVID, but it really does take us, it allows us to take a step back and really slow our pace down and really connect with our loved ones from more of a distant point. But with that, I do want to ask one last final question and end it on a positive note. So amongst all this craziness and negativity that's been going around, what are some silver linings and some positivity that you've seen happening around either your community or with yourself? What kind of positivity have you seen? So Amy, I'm going to start with you again.
So this is actually not necessarily related to what I am seeing right now, but I do think in general, natural disasters bring people together in an incredible way. I'm not sure if this is categorized as a natural disaster, but it's a disaster brought upon nature. And actually, the reason I say that is because 12 years ago, my family was living in Sichuan, China. It's a province right next to Tibet. And there was a huge earthquake, ended up being the second deadliest earthquake in China's history. 90,000 people died from it. And when it happened, my family was displaced. You're not allowed to go indoors because there might be like an aftershock and you don't know how big the aftershocks are. So similar situation happened where eventually we escaped to a different province and waited and waited, and every day like the death count just kept on increasing from people that they pulled from the rebels, and we just kept waiting for the government to tell us that it was time for us to go back and for businesses to open up again. My school was canceled at the time, but at the same time, like two positive things came out from that experience, like in retrospect. First of all, because my parents couldn't work at that point and I wasn't going to school, we connected so much in a really positive way. Like I remember when on the first day that it happened, we had to all sleep in the car just because you can't go indoors, airports are closed, gas stations are out of gas. And I've never felt so close to my family before. It just felt like we were going to keep each other safe in that sense. And the second good thing that happened was after all of this happened and we went back to school, at the time I was in middle school, and I remember thinking that the middle school kids were really mean. And I think this is just across the world, middle school kids are mean. And for some reason, when we went back to school, every child was an angel. Like every kid was so nice. Like people all became friends. Like cliques that like weren't talking to each other started to, like, it was, that lasted for a year. And I don't think it was just the kids, it was also the parents, and like it just, everybody was so grateful to be alive, one, and to like be back in their daily routines again. So not necessarily the positive I see with what's happening right now, but I'm sure when this is all over, we are going to be so happy.
I have to agree with you. I think everyone's going to be really happy when we can start to see everybody in person again. But Amy, what an incredible story. Thank you for sharing. So Mikhail, I'm going to jump up to you. What do you see the positive and silver linings out of all of this?
Yeah, I think the major thing for me probably has been just the fact that it's kind of opened me up to new experiences. And I think, that comes in, more tangible things. For example, like before I used to go to the gym and that's where I would do all my workouts, and, I would run on a treadmill and that was my run. And then when the gyms were closed, I still wanted to run, and so I had to go outside. And so at the beginning it was a little bit cold. Now I think it's much more bearable, but the point being is that like it's opened up my eyes to what it's like to kind of basically go on jogs outside and what it's like to see the city of Toronto, but like from a jogger's perspective. And that's been awesome because you get to just see so much more that you don't see before, especially like if you run across like down Lakefront, you can keep going forever. It's such a nice trail. And then I think the second part is, you always kind of, in these times, you always catch yourself on these thoughts of like, once this is over, this is what I'm going to do. Once this is over, like, these are the things that I want to do. And it's just kind of like making you more cognizant of the things that you truly miss and the things that you want to do when things get back to normal. And that's, like I said, it's all part of breaking the routine. And that's the sort of experience that you don't have unless, you're in an environment like this. And so to me, those are actually pretty big positives.
That's awesome. And it's nice to hear that you're doing so much running and you get to see a little bit more of Toronto. So that's great. And Amanda, what are your silver linings that you've seen and what positivity have you noticed?
Yeah, I mean, personally, it's been an opportunity to slow down a little bit and, reevaluate what our priorities are, relationships with friends and family. And I mean, Michael and I never would have got to eat lunch together during our regular work days. And so to kind of be able to, adapt and have some more time, essentially, I'd say is the big one. And then we are applying to be foster dog parents. So it's amazing listening to these organizations saying that their count of applications and people wanting to adopt and foster has been significantly increased since all of this. And so the silver lining being hopefully that people are able to take this time to really slow down, reevaluate what their priorities are and what we're looking forward to. And then hopefully, right, sometimes I feel like these things bring out people's kind of need to want to help and to contribute. And so where we see it is in dog foster applications, and hopefully that continues through other organizations and what people kind of get out of this time that they've had to sit at home and reprioritize. So that I'd say has been my big silver lining, is just looking at where I want to spend my time and energy right now.
Well, that's so exciting, Amanda. Well, congratulations ahead, and I hope that everything goes through. So that's such an exciting time. So Mark, we'll finish off with you, and then I guess it's that time. But Mark, what silver linings have you seen and what positivity out of all this?
Yeah, to finish off, I kind of agree with everyone. I'm finding that I think it's going to bring a lot of people closer together. I'm seeing that a lot of like international students that are left here and are stranded here for the time being while borders are closed are getting a lot of help from fellow students that are also that have extra room in their place or may not be using their place for the summer. So they're finding places to live and kind of stay while this is passing by. And also just it's a good time to grow and learn new things that you normally wouldn't have been able to.
Exactly. There's really so much positivity that you can see out of such a negative situation, but it's really great that you guys have shared all of your experiences and that you're able to see the positivity and what is happening. So thank you all for sharing. And I just want to thank everybody who's watching and our panelists. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, sharing your experiences, sharing your stories, and just sharing what you're going through, because chances are many of us are honestly we are going through the same thing. But the experiences are all different, and we all see the beauty in really what's happening. So we just get to slow it down and just take our time. I do want to mention one last thing is that, and I think Amanda, you touched about it a little bit, but with Diabetes Hope Foundation, if any of you do want to talk to a mentor or just want to talk to someone who you really understand or they understand what you're going through, please feel free to reach out to us. We have T1D buddies for the ages 13 to 18, as well as our Hope Connects mentorship program for 18 to about 25. So for those of you who really just want to talk to someone during this crazy time, have a webinar chat with our lovely mentors, please reach out and I will match you with someone just as incredible as our panelists here tonight. So with that, I do want to end things off here. So thank you all so much for joining us. And I guess just be kind to one another and we'll all get through this together. We're all in this together. So thank you all so much and we will see you next week. Bye everyone, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.